Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Henderson, and you've joined me for another episode of
Music Theory with Travis.
Thank you for joining me. I really enjoy the music of Pat Metheny. If you don't know that name, he is one of the foremost names in jazz fusion, and he has a large discography. I grew up listening to some of his records, and one of the songs that has recently captured my interest is the song called Across the Sky. It's from his album Imaginary Day that he did with pianist and composer Lyle. You may have heard also on my channel some folks, Phil and Linus, talking about this particular song and geeking out. And I wanted to expand a little bit about what they were saying because I don't think they really explained it super well. So we're going to go through the intro of Across the Sky and look at how a single motif is used and expanded in order to create just a whole movement of a piece. I've created a facsimile representation of the intro to this piece, just, well, one for fun and two to avoid any copyright infringement. So let's take a listen before we get into talking about the analysis. Okay, and the actual song is even more amazing than this. I'll put a card in the top of the video if you want to link it. The song starts kind of in a feeling of D minor, at least that's the first chord it starts on. So D minor, and the melody is second, third, fourth, third in terms of degrees. And then we go to a C minor, stepwise climbing, 3 stepwise notes, repeats, but instead it's a degree of 5, 6, 7. And we go back to that same first with the D minor. So then after the D minor, he goes to this chord with an F in the bass. You could assume that it's like an F minor, and it almost works. But he actually doesn't. So this is actually, what you're seeing is an F minor, but he raises the fifth to make it a D flat major over F. So in this case, the rising melody line that he's chosen actually makes more sense. And then he goes to this E diminished chord, which this is an expanded notation right here. If we condense it, it looks like, so once more expanded out. And then the melody comes in on an E, on a D sharp, which is a passing tone to a note that is in the diminished chord. And then back to the D flat over F. And then we go to this B flat minor, which is something we've never seen before. So right here, the melody is this C, and it's starting on the second degree of this chord, going upwards by steps. Once again, Pat and Lyle are using the same idea of just going up by steps. And also, they love to start on the second degree. They did that a lot on D minor as well. And then we do it again, but this time in a G minor 7. And we start on the second, and even though the second is not in this chord per se, we use the second degree of G minor as a passing tone to create this nice texture. And once again, we're using that D flat major over F again. Back to the G minor 7. And then we go to an A flat over C. This is a G over B. And then we go from an E flat second inversion to an E first inversion. And there's a lot going on here. It's kind of not a great idea to just call it an E, because there's some voice leading happening during this entire period of the E flat and the E. So you've got this voice leading here of but that leads very nicely into an A minor, and then to this C7, which is a passing tone, it's a passing chord really, to an F minor resolution. So this is an F minor sus4, or an F sus4 leading to an F minor right there. So putting all of those chords together sounds a bit like this. The F minor here can serve as sort of a plagal cadence to C, which is exactly where we're going. Let's put the melody in with that. I'll go back to the A flat. Very interesting chord progressions and melody pairing as well. Let's take another pass through the melody to analyze what's happening here in terms of how it's working compositionally. It's kind of an upward push, continuing an upward push, starting kind of back from the same. As Adam Neely says, repetition legitimizes. Now that is an interesting sort of line here. There's a strong push and then sort of a release or going backwards again. Listen to that one more time. Push, and then into this E diminished. It was all downward motion and sort of going back to falling into tune with this D flat over F. And then we actually go lower than we've ever been before with this B flat minor. This is a chord, this is the chord we started the piece on. It's almost like we're back to home base. It's like we tried something and we failed, we kind of hit rock bottom and now we're back where we started. But then there's this renewed sort of feeling because we're going to a new chord that is related, actually adjacent through the circle of fifths. So we're going up a fourth from a D to a G, so they're a fourth apart, and we're repeating ourselves. Now this is cool. Take a look at this chord progression step between the G minor and the A flat major. If I just play them both in root position, here's the G minor 7, and then we go to an A flat major. And that's a strong motion. Okay, so instead we're going back down in the chord in the left hand, but now instead of going back down to a G minor, we're going to a G major. And now we're here at this E flat, which we've never been at before. We started the song on D minor, right? But now we're at, interesting. So how does E flat major relate to the chords we've been at? So let's say look at the last strong chord we were at. That's the A flat over C. Okay? Those once again are related through the circle of fifths. They're adjacent. So A flat to E flat, they're a fourth apart, at least if you're going down from A flat to E flat. So there's a lot of cool relationship between G and E flat. They both share the note G. Okay, and then we'll move on to the E major. This chord might best be called an E augmented. So the E, whatever flavor of E that is, resolves to A, and once again, Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays are super aware of their circle of fifths because so E to A is they're a fourth apart from one another, and then this passing tone goes to C. How do we get from here? There's not a whole lot of tonal difference between A minor and C. If you just look at a triad, here's an A minor triad. You change one note in order to get a C. So you take that A, the root in the A minor, and you move it down 2 half steps. And that gets you to a C shape. We have our A minor back here in the song. The C moves us very nicely to an F, and an F sus, I suppose, if you're looking at the melody. C and F minor are also, yet again, related to one another through the circle of fifths. So it's very interesting to look at how chord progressions are manipulated and chosen throughout the part of the song. So much is baked into all of these chords and the melody, and yes, a 3 or 4 note motif, it's a ascending note motif is an integral part, but there's so much more that is going on, and I wanted to break it down for you. So hopefully this is a little interesting here, and I hope you'd enjoyed it. I'll be putting out another Music Theory with Travis very soon on a very different piece of music, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.